Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for this week's community call. This call is going to be part of the spiritual series. So I've got Joseph here and we'll be talking about Samadhi and the illusion of self. If you've got any questions along the way, pop them in the chat box. Otherwise, I'll be firing the questions tonight. And a quick recap from the last session of Samadhi Part 1 and the illusion of self. We talked about, for me, the key takeaway was the metaphor of Cypher from The Matrix. And I'd seen that movie plenty of times, as Cypher wants to be replugged into the Matrix, knowing full well that it's an illusion, in that choosing to go to sleep again. The difference in terms of the perspective that I took from last call, which was a really important point, was that he wanted to go back into the Matrix and fall asleep as a someone. And so that will be the theme of what we're going to be talking to tonight. And so a quick recap from your perspective, Joseph. In your view, what does Samadhi point to?
So Samadhi points to moment 4 on the system and the real emergence of mind into self, and the occupant in moment 2, 3 into moment 4. And the video points to the Maya construct of the illusion of self. And so there's this immense social global struggle with people's occupant in 2, 3. And I think some of the core stuff that we might touch into tonight may be around the fact that in the space of the occupant, there's this immense seduction and investment in not only being a someone, like we touched into last time, but also in knowing and knowledge and, you know, esoterically and over the eons of spiritual awakening and enlightenment. It's been a very interesting space to watch the desire for knowing more, to realize more. And of course, all you're actually doing is creating a more secure or insecure, knowledgeable Maya for yourself, and it isn't the way to freedom. So my sense is the moment 7 system is going to enable much less knowledge and much more ontological truth and being. So that's the point of the Samadhi video, is really just to help map across into moment 7.
Cool. And so in the video, he refers to Maya as the illusion of self, but he also alludes to forgetting. In your view, forgetting what?
Well, I think forgetting the truth, forgetting what's actually real, and in that the remembering becomes a construction of self, trying to remember, but obviously accessing the mind to do that. And so I think the forgetting isn't a forgotten thing so much as really a go to sleep thing. And so the person really falls asleep to the truth of their self as they are seduced in the lullaby of being their name, being their gender, being their history, being their behaviors, being their environment, being their family. You know, the lullaby that we tell our children from really the moment that they're born until they're big enough to sing on their own, that lullaby to their children. And so I think we've forgotten that we aren't the song. I think we've forgotten that we just aren't what we take ourselves to be in mind.
And so you've, not really you, but the moments have come to be. And each of the moments points to something significant. What's the significance of the 4th moment in particular?
Let me come back to that. What came up while you were speaking is Ken Wilber voiced about, I don't know, 2009 in some audio recording which found its way through to me, and he used a really lovely phrase for the lullaby. He didn't talk about it as a lullaby, but what he talked about is tranquilizer truths. And so that's what we give ourselves. We give each other, and society gives us this kind of truth that tranquilizes us. And, you know, the truths that we want to hear, the truths that make it feel okay, that make us feel okay, that we're a good person, that we're this. And so those truths and the acknowledgement of those tranquilizer truths is really what puts us to sleep. People don't want to, and inside of that, if you can feel inside of that, inside of the tranquilizer truths, the point of the tranquilizer is truly not to feel, truly not to be with what's actually ethically absolutely true about you. It's easier just to go to sleep to that. So it's a great audio. I'll see if I can find it out, and maybe we can get it into the community. So the question again was what, Maxi?
What's the significance of the fourth moment in particular?
So in the system, in the moment 7 system, moment 4 is the split gateway between self-realizing yourself through realizing what you are not, who you are not, really realizing that this thinking stuff and this feeling stuff, which is actually simply more feeling, more thinking, that this moment 2 and moment 3 really is not true, and you may be able to notice your ability to watch thinking and watch feeling, and of course someone's watching, something's watching. The other half of moment 4 in the self-realization is start to realize if that 2-3 isn't real and that 2-3 isn't me, half of self-realizing. The other half is to realize what's there in as well, that 2-3 arises within, and that starts to create, you know, the access to the kind of individual or singular causal view in moment 5. And in practice, in the transformative depth practices that we have in the moment 7 system, the witnessing creates the realization and the view of the witness. And so moment 4 is a particularly significant moment, and the realization of moment 4 is both ending of the occupant and opening to a more true view of your true nature. The moment 4. So moment 4 is a big one. It's lovely how the system's set out, because all the effort in the inquiry process is to get to realizing in moment 4, and there is an immense amount of effort. And one of the dynamics up to moment 4 is there is an enormous level of distracting happening, and that's in moment 1 with the real world or the objective world and events, things happening, not going your way and going really, really your way, and everything in between. And then, you know, the distraction of the thinking about the first moment in moment 2, the distraction of the feelings about the thinking in moment 2 about the first moment, and then the thinking about those feelings as we start to metastate ourselves into becoming a somebody with immense cathartic investment in an identity there, a misidentification of being your name, being your history, being your future. And you know, it really is like the space shuttle leaving Canaveral. It's all of the energy is about breaking the gravity of the matrix, breaking the gravity of the social plane, of the you know, the hold, the heteronomous hold that society has woven through us on behalf of being someone, being successful, being valuable. Yeah, so the distraction technologies up in through to moment 4, as that starts to be seen through in a not only a true way but an ontological way, where it's seen as a realization. So 2-3, you can't know you're not the occupant. Somebody said to me recently on the course, "Oh, I know I'm nothing." Doesn't mean anything. It's not about knowing. It's about direct realizing the nothingness. And then from the distraction of moment 4, the first part, the secondary part of moment 4 is falling into devotion to the truth, a love affair with being you.
One of the words that you shared just then was cathartic, and for me, it's that's I just kind of never saw it in that way. What's come up for me is sadness, but I think catharsis is definitely much closer to that. In the video, there's a moment where there's a guy who jumps into a pool in his suit. And personally, for me, the inquiry process, and especially after the spiritual retreat, kind of feels like that. This kind of sense of drowning. And in the video, he talks in that point about dying before dying. So how does that fit into the two halves of moment 4?
He talks about what before dying?
Dying before dying.
Oh, so that is really about ending, whilst you're alive, ending the life of the self, ending the life of Maya, of the illusion of self, through seeing that before you die, physically, before the body, moves on. Of course, you aren't going to go anywhere, but the body's certainly, temporal. And so I think the system, moment 7, as you know, being in inquiry, it's founded in Eastern esoteric realities, but it's built in Western philosophies, and more recently, particularly, dialectical critical realism. And so the system is extremely condensed on behalf of enabling movement to occur much more directly. And of course, we know that movement is called time, the construct of time. And so this is going to save a lot of time simply through being able to move much more directly towards the truth and towards that death of that not you.
So for those who are on the call, who are still kind of new with the system, what's the kind of pragmatic, practical difference that makes the difference in not only the moments, but being occupied and objective and unoccupied?
So there was a lot in that. What bit would you like to talk about?
What's the pragmatic difference that makes the difference in knowing this system? Or
Yeah. So the primary thing here is that traditionally we're kind of doing sitting practices and we're waiting for grace, and there's this big nothingness. Yeah, and then we can be very contract focused on our sitting, on our whatever kind of system or process that you might want, but they seem to still be, and so this is a generalization, but they seem to be a waiting system. They seem to be an approach of waitingness. Just sit here long enough on my cushion, let's say 30 years. Grace will then enable me to realize the truth spontaneously. And moment 7 says, we love grace, and if grace is occurring and she lives in your life, that's beautiful. But moment 7 enables pragmatic capacity for awakening, for truth. And the metaphors come up the last couple of weeks, and so I like to share it. Moment 7 is like recreating the ability to paint the Mona Lisa, or to paint, Van Gogh's sunflowers with painting by numbers. Yeah. So moment 7 is a painting by numbers for enlightenment, for awakening. It still may not look like a Mona Lisa. It still may not look like Van Gogh's sunflowers, but painting by numbers is going to look a damn sight closer than it would be if you were just giving a paintbrush and go paint. It's like, where do you start? What colors are supposed to be here? If you say, well, I want you to reproduce this picture, carry on. It's like, at least the system offers here's point 1, here's moment 1, here's the color of moment 1, and so by the time you really understand, live and breathe and apply the system, you've got an artwork of awakening. Sure, it can be critiqued, hey, and sure, you're probably damn well much closer to the truth than you would be without it.
And so there's this, with the system, to be able to fast track that, what does the system reveal in terms of what gets in the way or roadblocks?
You, that you take yourself to be. It shows the dynamic of the investment in that self. It shows the dynamic of the investment of that self in the investment in the world, in the investment in the eyes of the world and people watching. It also shows the investment in the eyes that are watching, investment. So wake up happens, hey. It's like, my goodness me. I'm being judged and I'm performing and I'm living my life with a pretend self whilst pretend people watch me and critique me and judge me and assess me. I mean, that is nuts. Hey.
Yeah.
It is nuts. And you can look around the world and it's nuts.
Yeah.
There's a certain formula, you've only got to engage it, and all of a sudden you can be anything in the illusory world. You know, Neo could jump a building and fly through clouds in the Matrix, and, you know, Donald Trump managed to get the presidency of the United States. Hey, you just got to know it's not real. A person couldn't really think about it really and really have that happen. It's got to be an illusion.
And so as you pointed to, you know, all the things that are happening around the world, there's this definite sense of a movement of people who are seeking something, seeking enlightenment. And in the video, he talked about spiritual practices like yoga, prayer, meditation, and chanting, and how paradoxically they're keeping people asleep.
Yeah, burn them fast. Hey, they're good for other things. You want to build your attention capacity, that's a great thing, you know, have mantras. You want to stare at a candle for 15 hours without blinking, without moving, you are going to be a stunningly awesome candle watcher. You know, you could definitely get a job full-time candle watching, no doubt. Fire brigade might even employ you. But it ain't going to wake you up to you. It's not going to. And so what that video is pointing to is that it's not in what you do, it's in what you be. And it's not in applying things and trying things out there with your verb, body, behaviors. It's about, I mean, this is always, it's all, we know it's from within. We know it's in being. The biggest thing I could offer people right now is if they would just get, you know, Martin gave me some feedback a couple of weeks ago about he thinks that the system's a bit heady. And I think there's some truth in that. It is a little bit heady, you know, but it's also based on not being about the head. It's also on about being the unknown, not the known. It just takes some knowing to get ready for the unknown. And of course, if you look at the subject matter of awakening and freedom and spirituality, and you look what's written on that, that's beyond heady. That's like, you know, that's a nutty head job. It's just gone bad. Hey, you read the Upanishads and stuff like that. It's just off the face, just to understand it, let alone enact it. And so I think moment 7's clarity for people.
So there's a tagline that that's come out of this before. If I remember it correctly, is be yourself by being yourself by being.
Yeah, so I think that's beautifully true. I came across that sentence stem, I think, in The Point of Existence that Almus wrote, and I think he said that directly or inferred to that directly, and then nihilists get it and go, oh well, there's nothing to do then. Well, that's true, there isn't nothing to do, but there's a damned lot to be. Hey. So there's Soto says, like, what's nothing to do? Well, there isn't anything to do, but there is everything to be, and to be aware of it. And then moment 7, beyond moment 6, into the actual moment 7 space of realizing. We won't go into that too much today, but this is spirituality is in moment 5. It's really the class in moment 5. We've still got a moment 6, and we've got a moment 7 post spirituality. And so even though it's very immature at the moment as a system, you know, moment 6 and moment 7 are already looking at the return to immanence, the return to reality, beyond it being about being, you know, a transcendent monk, nun sitting in a cave being free, because that's not of any good to anybody. And deep into moment 5 is a correlation to the Bodhisattva vow of no one is awake till everyone is. And so that now there's this kind of engaged causal unfolding happening, and not only are you free, but there's just free. There's really no one there worried about, you know, striving for freedom.
So the last question for you is in relation to moment 5 and what you shared there. How does like spiritual materialism as a way of being get in the way of waking up?
So I think the spiritual materialism, in terms of its obstacleness, spiritual materialism is simply a pointer to the fact that moment 2 and moment 3 aren't cleared out effectively. And this is why in inquiry, and then in enquiry, in the later inquiry stage, I am very mindful, and the system is very aware. This system lives, by the way. It's kind of, I don't like to write about it because it kind of lives itself. It unfolds. And in the system, there's a very direct, definite dynamic that we don't get into moment 5, moment 6, or moment 7 together until moment 4 is extremely stable. And moment 4 is a very subtle self, but not a max. Spiritual materialism emerges in 2-3, when 2-3, the occupant starts to get a sense of becoming spiritual. And then it does sitting practices in front of people, and, you know, it wants to be seen, and it wears an enlightenment suit if it can get away with it, and all that sort of, you know, all that sort of stuff. And so that's what's really lovely about the work and the system, is as we shared the egoic self, the embodied personality, in a genuine way, that spiritual materialism doesn't come into moment 5, moment 6 with this system. So we have a very clean and true unfolding in the way that evolution has already set it out. And I think we are, you know, endemically plagued a little bit in the spiritual space with people that know that they aren't their moment 2 and they aren't their moment 3. And I genuinely sense that they do know they aren't the occupant. But that is only half, that's only half the show. And so a person can get, you know, into moment 4 with a sense of not being Joseph, and not being caught by the thoughts, and not being caught by the feelings, and knowing I'm nothing, and it's not really awake. And it's a nice distinction to make. It's self-realizing and it's self-realized, but it isn't enlightening. It isn't free. It isn't an abiding trans-dual being itself, expressing itself in the real world in the first moment. So I think that maybe not in my lifetime, maybe in our lifetime, I don't know. I think that this moment 7 system has the capacity to go, that is not it. I hear that you know that, but you don't be that. And I think that's one of the gifts of the system, you know, for brand new practitioners in their developing their spiritual line of intelligence, through to, you know, even world famous spiritual gurus that are as we can hear in the language, there seems to be some ceiling to that space. And so my sense is they are self-realized, but it isn't the full package. It isn't the full picture. It's half the picture. And that causes a polarity, hey. But still useful, still very valuable. James Hayes Sr. said to me a few months ago, if we could just get everybody to realize moment 4, the world would be different. And he's on the money. The world would be completely different.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful segue into then what's the purpose of the retreat?
So the retreat is next year. You've got a slide for that, I know, so we can share the slide in a bit. So the purpose of the retreat next year is first and foremost for me to unfold. I like that. Yeah, it's truly for me to be in the presence of people in this space, you know, ready for this space, and you know, to really have each moment. We're going to do 1 moment per day of the retreat, and have this moment just flush itself up through this space on behalf of people receiving the transmission of this system, this awakening, on behalf of people learning that this system, so that at the end of the 7-day retreat, they will have a really strong grip, pragmatic understanding, and be able to hold conversations on the inside and the outside, and really feel into the truth of moment 7 as an awakening system that they can just do themselves if they will find the discipline and be a disciple of their own awakening with their own self and follow their truth home. Moment 7 certainly is a map I would recommend a person has. And so it's really about passing the map to each individual, so no one need you know, engage, you know, some fool like this sitting here talking, unless of course they want to, and I'd highly recommend it.
Great. So I've got the details up here on the screen. As Joseph mentioned, it's a 7-day spiritual retreat, and we're going to run it in 2018. The first 3 days are in March, between the 16th and the 18th, and we'll start with moment 2, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And then part 2 will be 4 days, between the 19th and the 22nd of April. We're going to hold that in Sydney. That is the only retreat planned for the year so far. So if you can make it, whether you're coming from Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane or anywhere around the world, actually, we'd love to have you there. I've got the price up on the screen there as well. And the standard coaching room offers apply in terms of 10% off for upfront payment and a 6-month payment plan. So if you're engaged and you want to come along, know the system intimately, and really unfold for yourself, then drop me an email, max.young@thecoachingroom.com.au, to figure out what's next and next steps there. Any final thing on the retreat?
No.
No. So next week we're going to have another community call, this time with Jay Headley on the leadership series. That'll be Tuesday the 25th of July at 7 p.m. and Jay will be speaking about power versus influence in leadership, specifically responsibility 4 and 2. So that's it from us. Thanks for joining us on this week's community call, and catch you soon.
Cheers, Maxie.